Welcome to the Virginia is for Sports podcast with your hosts, Kevin Flippin as Flip, Paul Gilman as PG Fitty P, and Kenny Wingle as K-Dub. Let's play VA.
We've got Will Driscoll on tonight. He's the executive director of the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. And I was going to say out of Portsmouth, Will, but where would you say y'all are out of?
We are out of Virginia Beach now. So when the museum closed in 2017, we made our move. We moved our administrative office over to Virginia Beach. So our home is Virginia Beach.
And that's where you live?
Yep.
All right. Well, I guess I should mention you and I connected through Eddie Webb, who preceded you in the role you're in now. And Eddie did it for, 25 years?
24 years. So, yeah, Eddie hired me at the Hall in 2017. And then when he made the decision to retire in 2019, he recommended me to the board to take over. So always grateful for Eddie's influence. He did, this is doing something for 24 years is a long time. And having done this now for 5 years, I have a lot more respect for the work he did for 24 years.
Yeah, because you're really busy, right?
Yeah, but it's a good busy. I mean, we are a nonprofit, so when you're in the leadership role at a nonprofit, regardless of big or small, you always wear multiple hats, and you're always trying to find new ways to be creative, new ways to engage your supporters, new partnerships. And so I look at everything as I'm always trying to add to what we do. And some people will laugh and say, why did you add something new? I'm like, because we need to add something new, but then it always ends up falling back on me, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, eventually you can't keep piling stuff up, but it sounds like you've got a little bit of capacity to maybe come up with new things.
A little bit. And, part of what we've done over the last few years is just try to be creative, try to think outside the box, change the mindset of exactly what a state Hall of Fame is, how it operates, who it serves, and how it engages with its supporters. Being a state Hall of Fame, we represent the entire state. We're the official Hall of Fame for Virginia, but we've always been based in Tidewater, Hampton Roads, whatever you want to call it. So which means you can't go east because you'll be in the ocean, and you can't go south because you'll be in North Carolina. Nothing against our friends down there, but we're the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. So we have to find new ways to get out around the state. And that's kind of what we're finally doing. We're finally starting to see the fruits of that labor come to fruition.
Yeah, I'm a history guy. Can you share the history of the Hall of Fame and how we got to where it is now?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it was founded by Herb Simpson, who worked for the city of Portsmouth. The idea of it kind of came about through Abe Goldblatt, longtime sports writer for the Virginian Pilot, and Herb Simpson, who worked for the city of Portsmouth. And I can't remember exactly who was on the trip. They were on a trip to Texas, and they saw that Texas had a sports Hall of Fame, and this was in the 60s. And they came back and they said, well, we need one of these. Like, we have to do something like this to honor our great athletes, coaches, and contributors. And so fast forward, the first class was inducted in 1972, and it included people like Ace Parker, Sam Snead. There were some really great names in that first class. And so fast forward 50 plus years, we're here in Virginia Beach. But in between that, from 1972 through 2017, we were in Portsmouth. And for many of those years, it was a physical museum presence. Started out small with about 2,000 square feet, growing to 5,000, then 10,000. And then ultimately the museum, which was in downtown Portsmouth from 05 to 17, that was 32,000 square feet. It's a humongous facility. It was beautiful, beautiful building. Building is still there, just not a museum anymore. But, as time goes on and people's habits changed, that building became very tough to manage. And, when you have 32,000 square feet, that's a huge operating budget. And so some of the partnerships that helped get the building open were no longer sustainable 12 years later. But the idea was, I credit the board at the time, the board was committed saying, well, even if the building can't survive, the hall has to survive. The brand of the Hall of Fame is bigger than four walls and a roof. And so they said, well, we got to create events. We have to create content, community initiatives around the brand of the Hall of Fame. And we'll figure out how we incorporate the exhibits into that, how we evolve them. But we got to focus on the brand. And so that's what we've done the last 7 years, is really kind of create, obviously we have our induction, but we've also created more community initiatives around sports. We've increased our scholarships to high school student athletes in Virginia. We've created a mental health program with the Children's Hospital here in Hampton Roads, the Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters. We've created our own podcast, the Hall Call interview series. We've done one-off events celebrating our inductees, like Lefty Driesell, who recently passed away. But when he went into the Naismith Hall of Fame, we did an evening with Lefty. We've done evenings with Michael Kadire and David Wright. So just trying to find new ways to engage our supporters, as opposed to just saying, hey, come look at all this great memorabilia. Well, now the memorabilia is just a part of that story. It's not the entire story.
Yeah, and to what you're saying, a museum, or I'm sorry, a hall should have artifacts. Those are important, but it should also be living, right?
Yeah.
It should be active in the community or in the world around it. And so for you guys, it's the state of Virginia or the Commonwealth, and the notion of sports. And when you and I spoke a few weeks ago, you said, hey, this is not just about college and pro athletes, coaches, and contributors. It's about all levels of athletics. You guys are trying to have a positive impact from 5-year-olds all the way to guys in their 80s.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, by general definition, when you hear the term Hall of Fame and you do word association, it automatically denotes history. So a Hall of Fame, you know, we're going to see it next week with our induction. We are celebrating past accomplishments. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's our bread and butter. We love celebrating past accomplishments, but we also want to bridge the gap to what's happening currently with sports in Virginia, and also what's going to happen in the future with sports in Virginia. And how we kind of tie it all together is, yes, we honor the best of the best with our annual induction, but we also want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for youth and student athletes to be their best by advocating for sports participation. Whether or not you make $1 playing sports professionally or even get a scholarship, you have to understand that there is so much value in just being on the team or participating in a sport that goes well beyond just the physical attributes. You're talking about punctuality. You're talking about teamwork. You're talking about problem solving. You're talking about camaraderie. There are so many superlatives that come from just participating in sports, and we see our role as kind of an advocate for that. We know that we have a good problem in Virginia, in that we'll always have an induction class. Like we have a backlog of people that are deserving, but we also need to champion sports in Virginia at all levels. And so that's really what our message is now. Is we have the induction, which is one day out of the year. There's a lot of build up to it, but what are we doing the other 364 days of the year to create value and champion sports in Virginia?
Yeah, I was going to ask you why you're excited to be the executive director of the Hall of Fame. And I think you just answered it. All those attributes that you get to experience participating, whether it's wrestling or a team sport like football, there's so much value that you get from those things that you're right. A lot of that's not physical.
Yeah. And, you know, well, one thing I'm excited about is I'm a Virginia native. So I'm a Norfolk native, 757. But I take great pride in running this and being a part of the State Hall of Fame. And I always see myself as a steward. You know, I'm a caretaker. You know, my goal is to make sure that we are doing right by the inductees. We're doing right by our mission, our core values. And I hope that with everything that we've done the last few years, people are really starting to see that. It's a different way of thinking about the Hall of Fame, obviously, with it not being a physical museum, but it's also unique to Virginia. And that's the thing that I think I get the most excitement out of, is that the platform that we're building, especially now with having a physical presence in Henrico County, bringing the induction up there in 2024 next week. We're the only state Hall of Fame, to my knowledge, that is really approaching something like this. You have a handful of states that still have large scale museum presences, really the SEC states, you know, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia. But most states are really just an induction banquet and a website. And I think that we're operating in this really unique space with a couple others that are starting to kind of navigate into this space as well. But we can create something long-term that Virginia can claim as its own. And I think that's what gets me most excited is, yes, it's not what it traditionally was, but it can be something much bigger and much greater. And I think that hopefully people are starting to understand that concept.
Yeah, you and I, when we spoke for the first time a few weeks ago, I told you I had just learned about the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. And interestingly enough, I learned about it from Eddie because he was inducted into his high school Hall of Fame, and I attended that ceremony. And you were telling me that roughly half the people that you engage with really didn't know about the Hall either at all or had just learned about it fairly recently.
Yeah, and that's while we represent the entire state, because our physical presence has always been here in Hampton Roads, you lean on the community to support you, whether that's through sponsors, whether that's through donors, or any other type of support, whatever that may look like. And so, especially when you have that physical footprint like a building, you have to get people in the door. So you're really focused on just bringing people, the local community, trying to get tourism here. Now, without that, we have that flexibility to do more around the state and try to find those other pockets of support. But it's on us to create that. You can't just say, well, we're the State Hall of Fame, you should support. No, you have to educate people. One, they have to know about us. Two, they have to know what our processes are. What else do we do? Why are we a 501c3 nonprofit? And so I take that, I see every opportunity in a new room or a new locality to say, more than half of these people probably are learning about the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame for the first time today. And that's okay. That's okay. That's why we're here. That's why we're pursuing this particular platform, where we want to create smaller exhibit presences in multiple areas of the state, celebrate the inductees where they're from. Because then what you'll see more nominations. We need eyes and ears everywhere. As much as I like to say I'm dialed into sports, there are things that I miss. There are people that I miss. There are athletes, coaches, contributors that I might not know of yet, or I might not know that they're connected to Virginia. So we need people to continuously help kind of put the spotlight on those people. And so I'm okay with people learning about the Hall of Fame today, even though we've been around for 52 years, because that's hopefully somebody that will become a supporter of the Hall of Fame in some form or fashion.
Yeah, you mentioned the founders going to Texas, and that was sort of the inspiration to establish the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. Look, I'm 55. I grew up here as a kid. Everything was football, basketball, baseball. There might have been a little bit of soccer back then, but not a lot. It was really those big three. And when you think about those big three sports, Texas you think of as football. But I would take our best 25, if you could make them all magically 18, 19 years old again, our football team would kill Texas's football team, I think so. I have this conversation a lot with people, and I say, depth wise, I think the Texases, the Californias, the Floridas might beat us. But if we're just looking at starting 11s on football, starting 5s in basketball, give us a starting 9 in baseball, I think we put up a fight against pretty much everybody. If not win. For being a state that's kind of in the middle of the road population wise, the talent that has come from this state, or the people that have come to the state and become great coaches at our colleges and universities, it's second to none. And I'm obviously a little biased, but I'm also speaking a lot of truth there. Like when you look at the talent that's come from the 757 area code, the 804 area code, Northern Virginia, Southwest Virginia, you look at the Barber brothers, JJ Reddick, they all went to the same high school. It's amazing. It's just absolutely amazing that this little pocket in the Mid-Atlantic continuously has connections to pretty much every major sporting event that you watch on TV. Yeah, and we've never really, there's an exception in the 70s with the ABA. We had the Virginia Squires, but we really haven't had a pro sports team in what I call the big three from my childhood. But even like if you expand out to soccer and other sports, we don't really have a presence. And I think college and high school athletics has become really, really important in the state of Virginia. And I'm glad the Hall's doing what it's doing to recognize a lot of that.
Yeah. So, without having the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, that's why I really love our Hall of Fame, because the people that are going in are strong connections to Virginia. You're either from Virginia, you grew up here, you might not have been born here, but you grew up here, or you did something great at one of our colleges and universities, 37 NCAA sanctioned programs, Division I, II, and III, all the way from the Virginias and Virginia Techs of the world down to the 12 ODAC schools that are based in Virginia. And there's just stories and great athletes and coaches and contributors from all of those schools. And so the people that go in each year in our class of 8, 9, or 10 people, there's really no doubt why they're in the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame. You can see those connections to the Commonwealth pretty clearly.
Yeah, you gave me a great example when you met Kevin Kinney and me that day over at the Henrico Sports and Events Center. Is it event or events?
Sports and Events Center.
Okay. Your example was, hey, yeah, Fran Tarkin was born in Virginia, but he didn't really live here after the age of, what was he? He was still a baby.
I think he was very, very young. Like, I don't think he attended any school here in Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Fran's career, he should be, I mean, he's in the NFL Hall of Fame, right? So you would think he would be in the State's Hall of Fame for where he was born, but I think the Tarkins moved around a bit, or at least they moved when he was a baby.
Yeah, so I don't know too much about the history other than I do know that he moved. Like I said, I don't think he ever attended any sort of school here in Virginia. And, you know, I'm not going to say that we've gotten it 100% right throughout our history. No Hall of Fame has gotten it 100% right. You know, sometimes there are nominations that, for whatever reason, you know, over the course of their 5-year lifespan, they don't make it through. And then even if they get renominated and they have another 5 years, they don't make it through. And that's not to say that the person isn't deserving. Sometimes the timing just doesn't match up. And so I'm always open to, you know, hearing people out and saying, well, this is why this person should be in. And then I always encourage somebody to say, you know, continue to nominate. If the nomination has expired, please renominate, because you never know. You never know who's on the honors court now. Maybe it's a different voice, maybe things like that. And we've seen that the last few years where we've had a couple people get in who had previously been nominated. Their nominations expired. They've been renominated, and now they've gotten into the hall. So again, we've never gotten everything 100% right. I get asked questions all the time. Why isn't this person in? Why isn't that person in? And you know, and that's part of the gig in running a Hall of Fame. You just know that there's always discussion and debate.
Yeah, I did it to you the last time we saw each other.
It happens all the time. I love those conversations.
I think.
But what I then follow people up with is, I like that because it shows that somebody cares. And then if that person cares, maybe next thing you know, maybe there's some momentum that comes from that. Maybe it might just start with a nomination, but now it might blossom into something more. So I see that as an opportunity, as opposed to, oh, I'm getting asked this question again.
Well, and to your point, it's fun to have the debate.
Sports is about debate.
A lot of it absolutely is. So I imagine you're pretty tired right now, given the fact that the ceremony is coming up in 2 weekends.
So tired would be, kind of an understatement. More adrenaline right now than anything. You know, a lot of the main details are done. All the inductees, we know they'll all be there. I mean, we take care of that portion during the initial process. You know, we really focus on making sure that, to use the buzzword of the day, name, image, and likeness. If we put your name, image, and likeness on a flyer, people expect you to be there. So we always work diligently in between the vote and the announcement to make sure that those inductees can make it. And we have protocols just in case the dates don't work. But you get to this point and, you know, it's like planning a golf tournament. You do everything, and then the one thing you can't control is the weather, and sometimes it rains. At this point, you want to make sure the inductees' travel schedules work out okay next week. You want to make sure that, you know, the power doesn't go out in the venue. You know, the things that you can't control. So I always tell our staff and our volunteers, control the controllables. If there's something out of our control that goes wrong, yes, it's frustrating, and probably there's nobody who's going to be more frustrated than me. But if we can't control it, then we have to deal with it. But if what we can control, if we take care of that, we should be good. And but yeah, very little sleep over the next 8 to 10 days. And it's not even because of the event itself. It's just I'm just naturally a little bit of a worrier when it comes to events. I just want to make sure that they go on without a hitch.
Well, somebody who is coordinating all the things you're coordinating, I think everybody associated with the hall wants you to be a little anxious and uptight about everything.
Exactly. It means I care.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Can you describe what happens the day of?
Yeah,
ceremony?
absolutely. Yeah. So a few years ago, back in 2018, we kind of revamped the weekend a little bit where the previous for many years prior to that, we focused on the banquet. It was a sit down banquet in the evening with this ceremony. Banquets, they kind of have run their course. And what we found in those years leading up to making this decision, the change was they were going sometimes 4.5 hours. And by the time you'd eaten and you're finally into the induction portion, people kind of had lost their focus. So we've kind of created 2 events now where people can kind of pick and choose how they want to engage with the Hall of Fame that weekend. So Saturday morning at the Sports and Event Center, we have what we call Breakfast with Champions. That is a casual, family-friendly event. When I say casual, I will be in jeans and a Hall of Fame pullover. I do it every year. I send the inductees photos. This is what I'm wearing. So if you want to come in suit and tie, you can, but this is what I'm wearing to the Breakfast with Champions. And it's breakfast with the new class of inductees. It's a Q&A with the class of inductees. And then there's an autograph session at the end. And we've had some great interactions between the inductees over the years that we've done this event. You get to see a lot of personality because we create that casual atmosphere because we want them to feel comfortable. And so that event is great. It's a great place to bring your kids. It's a great place to bring youth and student athletes because they might not want to sit through 10 speeches later that night, but they might want to have the opportunity to meet a Jill Ellis or a LaShawn Merritt or a Chris Long that morning. Then you fast forward to the evening, and that is where we get the more pomp and circumstance. But it's not a sit-down dinner anymore. It's a large-scale reception, free-flowing, no velvet ropes. So the new class is there. We'll have about 20 past inductees in attendance, and you can go and you can engage with the inductees. You can share memories. You can create memories with the inductees for about an hour and a half, and then we transition to the ceremony. And once the ceremony starts, we get right into it. And everybody is seated facing the stage. So nobody's got to turn chairs around, sitting down at a table. It's theater style seating. Our sponsors are seated together. All the groups that purchase tickets are seated together. But if everybody listens to my time recommendations, it's a 2-hour event. So it's kind of fast paced, but it's great because I do, even though there's 9-10 speeches, I enjoy them because there's always some emotion that comes out of it. I tell people all the time, you're going to most likely laugh because there's always a comedian in the group. You're going to think because somebody's going to share a story about when they reached a fork in the road and they could zig or they could zag and they made the right decision and what would have happened if they didn't make that decision. And you're going to cry because somebody's going to tell you a story that is just very emotional about how they got to that point that night, standing on stage, being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And so you get to laugh, you get to think, you get to cry. I think Jimmy V once said, that's a pretty good day. That's a pretty good day. And so take out the fact that you don't go into it thinking it's just speeches because it's not. You get that engagement opportunity prior to, and then you get to hear some pretty impactful speeches after that. So the whole day, 2 events open to the public, just all you have to do is purchase a ticket, but you get to choose how you want to engage. And I think that's what's most important is we're not forcing you to come to an event that you might not want to. You get the opportunity to choose.
No, that's very well described. I appreciate that. You mentioned 20 past inductees. Any fun names out of those 20 that you want to share?
So I never make promises until they're there. But yeah, we have heard from Ralph Sampson, with Craig Littlepage, Chris Long, and Monica Wright Rogers going in from the University of Virginia. We do have a few UVA people that are coming down. So Ralph Sampson, Barry Parkhill will be there. It's also the same day as the UVA spring game, so we are missing out on a few UVA football people. But we got Ralph Sampson, Barry Parkhill, Johnny Newman from Richmond, University of Richmond's all-time leading scorer will be there. Jimmy Laycock, who went in last year from William & Mary football, will be there. So the list is still working right now, but we heard today that Dave Robbins, legendary Virginia Union basketball coach, will be in attendance. So we're really excited. We love the fact that our past inductees still see value in the Hall of Fame and still take pride in the Hall of Fame, that they want to come to this event and kind of share that moment with the new class of inductees. And that's always something that I've been very touched by every year I've been involved with the Hall.
Yeah, and a lot of the names you said, to include Ralph Sampson, he's quintessential Virginia, right? He's lived in Virginia his entire life, with the exception of his pro basketball career.
Yeah, I mean, he's born in Virginia, went to high school in Virginia, went to college in Virginia, had great professional success. Obviously, injuries probably cut that short, but He's somebody that when you talk about sports in Virginia, he's top of mind for many people.
Yeah, just a quick funny story. I met a lady who, she's a few years older than I am, and she goes, "Yeah, I went to UVA I graduated in I think she said 84." I said, "Oh, you were there at the same time as Ralph Sampson." She goes, "Yeah, I was actually in Doug Newberg's wedding." Doug was kind of he sat the bench for UVA, but he was on those Sampson teams. He was the kind of guy that came in when they were killing another team, and he would shoot 35 footers. Anyway, I knew Doug because he did some things at the university when I was there. And she goes, "Yeah, they paired up the bridal party based on height. And I happen to be the tallest female. So I'm in the picture standing next to Ralph Sampson, who was easily 20 inches taller than me."
He's a guy, you can't miss him.
No, you cannot.
You can't miss him.
Cool. Well, I think the most important question I'll ask now is Howie Long going to be there?
We have heard that, yes, Chris's dad will be there.
I mean, I've grown up watching Howie play, watching him on Fox. I think he's been on Fox forever, right?
I think he's been on since Fox got football in the early 90s.
Yeah,
believe it or not. But
yeah.
What's funny about the thing that I also love about the class each year is their connections to sports, and not just sports in Virginia. So yes, obviously Chris Long's dad is Pro Football Hall of Famer Howie Long, but you then have Hal Nunley. Hal Nunley, this is a posthumous honor for Coach Nunley, who coached at Randolph-Macon for 24 years. He passed away in 2004. But Coach Mike Rhodes, formerly of VCU and Randolph-Macon, now the head coach at Penn State men's basketball, Coach Rhodes will be there. Coach Rhodes took over for Coach Nunley at Randolph-Macon. A good friend of Coach Nunley's was Gary Williams, national championship coach from the University of Maryland. Gary will be there. So you start to see the connections that our inductees have beyond the borders of the Commonwealth. And those connections are so strong that, especially in Coach Nunley's case, 20 years after he passed, they still see the importance of being there to support their longtime friend and, in Coach Rhodes' case, mentor, as he goes into the Hall of Fame. So that's what I really enjoy when you start talking about stories and you start talking about connections, is moments like that.
Yeah, and I'll just speak real quickly about Hal Nunley. I grew up in the town of Ashland. My mom was a professor at Randolph-Macon, and I watched Hal coach a countless number of games, and I know a lot of stories, not directly, but indirectly. And when you watched him coach, he was extremely competitive. He did not seem like a happy guy. Like, he was very intense. They were going to win, and if they didn't win, they were going to do everything possible to try to win. And he was described as the most competitive person in the history of Randolph-Macon, sort of thing, at least for the people that knew him of that generation.
I'm learning that as I've talked to a lot of his former players, because a lot of them will be in attendance. Again, just kind of showing the impact that he had, that 20 years after his passing, almost 100 Randolph-Macon connected people will be in attendance at the induction ceremony. So it'll be a really special moment when Coach Nunley goes in, and one of his former players will provide the speech on his behalf.
That's so cool, man. And I know all the inductees are going to have cool stories. And to your point, they're going to make you think, laugh, or cry, or maybe all three, each one of them.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Can you share some fun names of folks that are in the Hall of Fame? And by the way, I'll just throw this out. I think the most famous person in the Hall is Arthur Ashe. I don't think it's even close. But
that definitely in the discussion. I mean, Arthur Ashe, obviously from Richmond, the impact he made both as a tennis player and as an activist and off the tennis court, to this day, almost over 30 years after his passing, his legacy still lives on. But you then look at Pro Football Hall of Famers that are also in our hall: Lawrence Taylor, Bruce Smith, both in the conversation for greatest defensive player of all time. Rondé Barber just went into the Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame last year. Kenny Easley. You have Ryan Zimmerman, D'Angelo Hall. They went in last year. It's Lefty Driesell. I mentioned him earlier. Coach Driesell, the only coach to win 100 games at 4 different schools in NCAA Division I, was Lefty Driesell.
Wow.
Sam Snead, Lanny Watkins, Curtis Strange on the golf side. We then let's look at Olympic gold medalists. You have Benita Fitzgerald Mosley. You have Lawrence Johnson, who was a silver medalist in the pole vault. This year, we have 3-time Olympic gold medalist LaShawn Merritt going in. The list goes on and on and on. And it's always fun to see the list come together as we go through this committees and then the voting process.
And not to get into too much detail about the process, but it's got to be really tough to draw the line between the number of folks, the 8, 9, or 10 that get in every year, and then that 11, 12, and 13. Like your heart goes out to them because who barely missed, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah, 100%. And it's, we are, so the committee that votes ultimately on the class is called the Honors Court. And it's made up of past inductees, athletic directors, sports information people, or just people tied to athletics in Virginia. And what they get is they'll get 30 to 40 nominations that are passed on from our screening committee. The screening committee reviews all open nominations, which is over 100. So some of them are much stronger than others. I'd say there's probably 50 to 60 right now that we would say are very strong contenders for at least the discussion. So the Honors Court gets 30, in between 30 and 40. And it's our job that day to select the class. And a challenge that a state Hall of Fame always has, and this isn't unique to us, this is all state Halls of Fame, is we can't focus on one sport and one level. You look at Pro Football Hall of Fame. Pro Football says exactly what they focus on in their title, pro football. Now, there's always discussion. There's always debate. There's always, well, this person should be in, and that's going to happen anywhere. But we have to look at professional, college, high school, all sports. And we've represented 22 individual sports throughout our history, and that would probably be more, but we lumped all track and field as one. So 22 unique sports have been represented with induction. John Lugbill from Sports Backers, he was an international whitewater canoer. He went in 2 years ago. So we really do try to focus on not just the big three. We really try to make it a diverse class that touches all corners of sports. But yeah, being in the Honors Court, sometimes decisions are easier than others, but sometimes that meeting can go for 4.5 hours because we want to make sure that we get it right. We want to make sure that we get it right, that it's a class that's representative of Virginia. But we also want to make sure that all the people that are going in are deserving of this recognition.
Very cool. I told you before we got together tonight that I was going to ask you what we do as a Mount Rushmore segment where we say, hey, what's your top 4? And then here's the question or the topic. We're at 31 minutes right now. I don't want to take up a lot of your time because you are so busy these days. And I imagine once the adrenaline slows down, you kind of collapse each day. But do you have 4 kind of quickish stories that you hold dear based on your time with the Hall?
Luckily, I do. Luckily, my time has been fairly uneventful, but I do have some funny stories, and 2 of them come from our Breakfast with Champions event. So remember, we created this event in 2018, and it was really to provide the inductees a casual kind of lead-in to the weekend. And so during the first Q&A, it was 2018 class. So we had Frank Beamer and Thomas Jones, legendary running back from University of Virginia, 10,000 yards in the NFL. They're sitting on stage next to each other. Frank, Coach Beamer, obviously coached at Virginia Tech for many, many years, recruited Thomas because Thomas was from Big Stone Gap, which from where I sit here in Virginia Beach is about 7 hours that way. So Frank recruited Thomas, and pretty much the entire breakfast, anytime they might not have even been talking about football, but Frank would always just look at Thomas and say, I can't believe you drove past my school all those times to go to that other school. And so that was when I knew we had this event. We're cooking with gas now. So the following year, Reuben Brown goes in. Reuben is a longtime offensive lineman for the Bills and the Bears, but he's from Lynchburg, went to EC Glass High School and played at Pitt. One of the questions that was asked of Reuben was about the Reuben sandwich. And Reuben put his head down, thought for a second, and said, man, I hate that sandwich. So those are 2. The next one isn't so much a story, but it just kind of gives you a little bit of insight into our process. In November 2019, so we voted on the class of 2020 at that point. They were supposed to be inducted in April 2020. We all know what happened. We were 6 weeks shy when that class was not able to be inducted that year. They ultimately got inducted in 2022. So we vote on the class that year, and D'Angelo Hall is actually selected for the class of 2020. So I called D'Angelo, let him know. He's over the moon about it. We're very excited. And of course I say, all right, here are the dates in April. Let me know if you can make it. If you can't, we have a deferral process where the only people that will know are you, me, and the honors court. It won't even go on the flyer. We'll just defer you to next year. Well, he was working with the NFL Network at that time, and our weekend in 2020 coincided with the NFL draft. He wasn't getting off. Long story short, pandemic forces us to cancel 2020. So we pushed that class to 2021. We couldn't do 2021. So we push it to 2022. Call D'Angelo up again, give him the dates. NFL draft again, still working for NFL Network. So D'Angelo Hall finally went into the Hall of Fame in 2023. He had to sit on that for about 3.5 years before he finally went in to the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame.
The biggest pandemic in 100 years, plus maybe the biggest sporting event that's not really an actual sport or a game, right?
Exactly. But he couldn't get off because he was with NFL Network. The final story, and this is actually a really good story, and it's going to be tough to top this. And honestly, because I'm not a big fan of drama, I hope nothing tops this story. But 2019, Heath Miller goes into the Hall of Fame. That year, our weekend was the first weekend in April. And there's a reason why we now do it either the second to last or the last weekend in April. So it was the first weekend in April, which also coincided with Final Four weekend. Well, in 2019, a certain team from Virginia won the national title. That was the University of Virginia. Heath Miller played football at the University of Virginia. So our induction ceremony is Saturday night, starting at about 6 o'clock, I believe, that year. So when Heath gets into town on that Friday, we just start chatting. And I asked him, I said, are you a big basketball fan? And I'm hoping that his answer is no. And he says, huge. I'm like, great. Because UVA was playing Auburn in the first game on Saturday night. Our induction ceremony was taking place during the first game. If it was the second game, we would have been fine. So during the induction ceremony, I'm coming off and on stage. So I'd be backstage, and then when somebody was announced for induction to come to stage, I would come out, give them the award, take pictures, and then go backstage. So I'm following the Auburn UVA game that night. And I know Heath is as well, because I can see him in the crowd. So I know he's following it. I cannot stress this is the honest to God truth. The second Kyle Guy gets fouled shooting the three-pointer is when our MC says, please welcome Heath Miller to the stage for induction into the Hall of Fame. So Heath goes up and gives his speech, not knowing how the game played out. So luckily for all UVA fans and just Virginia sports fans, it turned out all right. Kyle Guy hits the 3 free throws. They beat Auburn. We know what happens on Monday night. So I told him, I was like, I don't know if I should say sorry, but I just hopefully you'll be able to see the game on Monday. And he said, I'm actually going to the game on Monday. I said, perfect. And then that Monday, there was a picture that came out of him next to his good friend, Chris Long, who's going into the Hall of Fame next weekend, enjoying UVA winning a national title. So hopefully we don't have any more conflicts like that in the future.
I mean, what are the chances those two things coincide? And he had to be distracted. He had to wonder probably every 10 seconds, what happened? Did we win the game?
Exactly. And I couldn't run off stage. I couldn't run on stage and be like, hey, by the way, Kyle Guy just hit 3 free throws.
Oh man. Yeah. What a, by the way, I'll say this about Heath Miller. When he dropped the ball, which maybe happened twice in his career, college and pros, it was, you couldn't believe what you were seeing. He had the best hands of any tight end that I ever saw play. Yeah.
I mean, you look at his stats overall, he's worthy of consideration for pro football. Now, whether or not he gets in, well, remains to be seen, but he's worthy of consideration.
Did you see the job he just got?
I did, yeah. Chris Long's old high school, St. Anne's Belfield.
He's staying. He's going to be in the States. Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so let's end with how do folks get tickets and learn more about the induction ceremony?
Absolutely. Appreciate that. So the induction ceremony, the breakfast with champions, and the Hall of Fame reception and ceremony are Saturday, April 20th at the Henrico Sports and Event Center. It's for those who are familiar with the area. It's the old Virginia Center Commons. I believe that's what the old mall was called. But you go to our website, vasportshof.com, vasportshof.com. Tickets are still available. The good thing about this venue is we don't have space limitations, so we can keep the ticket portals open until Wednesday, April 17th. The reason why we're closing them down on the 17th is because our staff here in Virginia Beach has to migrate up to Henrico for the weekend. So we got to leave on the 18th. So we're going to leave it open as long as we can. We've seen great support. It's going to be big crowds at both. And we want everybody to join us. We want you to, even if this is the first time learning about the Hall of Fame, come enjoy this event. Come learn about the Hall, because you will learn about the Hall while you're there as well. But vasportshof.com. Tickets are still available. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We're very active on social media.
Well, thank you so much for doing this tonight. Wish you best of luck over the next few days, and certainly at the ceremony and the breakfast themselves. I will be there. I'm excited to be there, and I just want to shake Howie's hand and have somebody take a picture of that. That's all I really want.
Again, no velvet rope at the reception and ceremony, so that's on you.
Yeah, I'm not afraid. I will absolutely make an effort.
Perfect. We appreciate the opportunity, Paul. This is fun.
Thanks, Will. Awesome, man.